everybody, it's Reese. So, it is October. Oh my god, favorite month of the year for me. So, I realize it's 2 weeks before Halloween, so the month is almost over. Which makes me sad. But for the next 2 weeks, I kind of want to do some creepy, gruesome, Halloween-y type stuff. So, for today, I'm going to be doing something kind of gruesome and creepy. I'm going to be reading from this book called Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. So, Grimm's Fairy Tales is, fairy tales, but they got a twist to them. They're kind of like the original stories. So they're a lot more creepy and more, not fairy tale-like. Not perfect little endings always. Sometimes it ends badly. But I think they're quite good. So I picked out 2 stories today. Little Red Riding Hood and Hansel and Gretel. I'm going to be starting with Hansel and Gretel. And so if you like what I'm doing with this, I could continue picking out stories. Some you might know from this book, so you could give me suggestions on what book you would want me to read. Not book, what story you would want me to read out of this book. Or another book you want me to read chapters out of. So leave a comment down below, all that junk. So let's get started. Hansel and Gretel. Near a great forest there lived a poor woodcutter and his wife and his 2 children. The boy's name was Hansel and the girl's Gretel. They had very little to bite or to sup. And once when there was a great dearth in the land, the man could not even gain the daily bread. As he lay in bed one night thinking of this, and tossing and turning, he sighed heavily and said to his wife, "What will become of us? We cannot even feed our own children. There is nothing left for ourselves." "I will tell you what, husband," answered the wife. "We will take the children early in the morning into the forest, where it is thickest. We will make them a fire, and we will give each of them a piece of bread. Then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will never find their way home again, and we shall be quit of them." "No, wife," said the man, "I cannot do that. I cannot find in my heart to take my children into the forest and leave them there, alone. The wild animals could come soon and devour them." "Oh, you fool," said she. "Then we will all 4 starve. And better get the coffins ready," and she left him no peace until he consented. "But I really pity the poor children," said the man. The 2 children not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitterly and said to Hansel, "It is all over with us." "Do be quiet, Gretel," said Hansel, "and do not fret. I will manage something." And when the parents had gone to sleep, he got up, put on his little coat, opened the back door, and slipped out. The moon was shining brightly, and the little flints lay in front of the house glistened like pieces of silver. Hansel stopped and filled the little pocket of his coat as full as he could hold, and when he went back again, and said to Gretel, "Be easy, dear little sister, and go to sleep quietly. God will not forsake us," and laid himself down again in his bed. When the day was breaking, and before the sun had risen, the wife came and awakened the 2 children, saying, "Get up, you lazy bones, we are going into the forest to cut wood." Then she gave each of them a piece of bread and said, "That is for dinner, and you must not eat it before then, for you will get no more." Gretel carried the bread under her apron, for Hansel had his pockets full of the flints. Then they set off all together on their way to the forest. When they had gone a little way, Hansel stood still and looked back towards the house, and this he did again and again, till the father said to him, "Hansel, what are you looking at? Take care not to forget your legs." "Oh, father," said Hansel, "I am looking for at my little white kitten who was sitting on the roof to bid me goodbye." "You young fool," said the woman. "That is not your kitten, but the sunshine on the chimney pots." Of course Hansel had not been looking at his kitten, but had been taking every now and then a flint from his pocket and dropping it on the road. When he had reached the middle of the forest, his father told the children to collect wood to make a fire to keep them warm. And Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood, enough for a little mountain. And it was set on fire, and then the flame was burning quite high, and the wife said, "Now lie down by the fire and rest yourselves, you children. We will go and cut wood, and when we are ready, we will come and fetch you." So Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and at noon they ate their pieces of bread. They thought their father was in the wood all the time, as they to hear the strokes of the axe, but really it was just a dry branch hanging to a withered tree that the wind moved to and fro. And when they had stayed there a long time, their eyelids closed with weariness, and they fell fast asleep. When at last they woke, it was night. And Gretel began to cry and said, "How shall we ever get out of this wood?" But Hansel confronted her, saying, "Wait a little longer until the moon rises, and then we can easily find the way home." And when the full moon got up, Hansel took his little sister by the hand and followed the way where the flint stones shone like silver, showed them the road. They walked on the whole night through, and at the break of day they came to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the wife opened it and saw it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty children, why did you sleep so long in the wood? We thought you were never coming home again." But the father was glad, for it had gone to his heart to leave them both in the woods alone. I don't know why I said forest. Not very long after that there was again great scarcity in those parts, and the children heard their mother say at night in bed to their father, "Everything is finished up. We have only half a loaf." And after the tale comes to an end, the children must be off. We will take them further into the woods this time, and so that they shall be not able to find the way back again, and there is no other way to manage. The man felt sad at heart and thought it would be better to share one last morsel with one's children, but the wife would listen to nothing that he said, but scolded and reproached him. He who says A must say B too, and when a man is given in once, he has to do it a second time. But when the children were not asleep and heard all the talk, when the parents had gone to sleep, Hansel got up to go out and get more flint stones, as he did before. But the wife had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. But he comforted his little sister and said, "Don't cry, Gretel, and go to sleep quietly, and God will help us." Early the next morning, the wife came and pulled the children out of bed. She gave them each a little piece of bread, less than before, and on the way to the one, Hansel covered the bread in his pocket. And one stopped to throw a crumb on the ground. "Hansel, what are you stopping behind and staring for?" said the father. "I am looking at my little pigeon sitting on the roof to say goodbye to me," answered Hansel. "You fool," said the wife. That is no pigeon, but the morning sun shining on the chimney pots." Hansel went on as before and strewed breadcrumbs all along the road. The woman led the children far into the wood, where they had never been before in all their lives. And again there was a large fire made, and the mother said, "Sit still there, you children, and when you are tired you can go to sleep. We are going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening, when you are ready to go home, we will come and fetch you." So when noon came, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel, who had strewed his along the road. Then they went to sleep, and the evening passed, and no one came for the poor children. When they awoke, it was dark night, and Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Wait a little, Gretel, until the moon gets up, and then we shall be able to see our way home by the crumbs of bread I scattered along it." So when the moon rose, they got up, but they could find no crumbs of bread, for the birds of the woods and of the fields had come and picked them up. Excuse me. Hansel thought they might find the way all the same, from the morning until the evening, but they could not find the way out of the wood. And they were very hungry, for they had nothing to eat but a few berries they could pick up. And when they were so tired they could no longer drag themselves along, they lay under a tree and fell asleep. It is now the third morning since they had left their father's house. They were always trying to get back to it, but instead of that, they only found themselves further in the forest. Further in the wood, not forest. Why do I keep saying forest? And if help had not come soon, they would have starved. But noon they saw a pretty snow-white bird sitting on a bough. Yeah. And singing so sweetly that they stopped to listen, and when he had finished, the bird spread his wings and flew before them. And they followed after him until they came to a little house, and the bird perched on the roof. Sorry, I have to shift. There we go. Perched on the roof, and when they came to near, they saw the house was built of bread and roofed with cakes, and the window was of transparent sugar. "We will save some of this," said Hansel, "and will make a fine meal. I will eat a piece of the roof, Gretel, and you have some of the window. That will taste sweet." There we go. So Hansel reached up and broke off a bit of the roof, just to see how it tasted. And Gretel stood by the window and gnawed at it. And then they heard a thin voice come from inside. "Nibble, nibble like a mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" And the children answered, "Never mind, it is the wind." And they went on eating, never disturbing themselves. Hansel, who found the roof tasted very nice, took a great piece of it, and Gretel pulled out a large round window pane, and sat down and began upon it. Then the door opened, and an aged woman came out, leaning upon a crutch. Hansel and Gretel felt very frightened, and they let fall what they had in their hands. The woman, however, nodded her head. "Ah, my dear children, how come you here? You must come indoors. Stay with me. You will be no trouble." them each by a hand and led them into her little house. And there they found a good meal laid out, of milk and pancakes with sugar, apples, and nuts. After she had showed them two little white beds, and Hansel and Gretel laid themselves down on them and thought they were in heaven. The old woman, although her behavior was so kind, was a wicked witch who lay in wait for children and had built the little house on purpose to entice them. When they were once inside, she used to kill them, cook them, and eat them, and then it was a feast day with her. The witch's eyes were red, and she could not see very far, but she had a keen scent like the beast, and knew very well when human creatures were near. When she knew that Hansel and Gretel were coming, she gave a spiteful laugh and said triumphantly, "I have them, and they shall not escape me." Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she got up and looked at them. They lay sleeping, as they lay sleeping so peacefully with round rosy cheeks, she said to herself, "What a fine feast I shall have!" Then she grasped Hansel with her withered hand, and led him into a little stable, and shut him behind a grating, and call and scream as he might, it was no good. Then she went back to Gretel, and shook her, crying, "Get up, lazy bones, fetch water, and cook something nice for your brother. He is outside in the stable, and must be fattened up. And when he is fat enough, I will eat him." Gretel began to weep bitterly, but it was no use. She had to do what the wicked witch bade her. And so the best kind of victuals were cooked for poor Hansel, while Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Each morning the old woman visited the little stable and cried, "Hansel, stretch out your finger, and that I may tell you if you soon be fat enough." Hansel, however, used to hold out a little bone, and the old woman, who had weak eyes, could not see what it was, and supposing it to be Hansel's finger, wondered very much that it was not getting fatter. When 4 weeks had passed, and Hansel seemed to remain so thin, she lost patience and could not wait no longer. "Now then, Gretel," she cried to the little girl, "be quick and draw water. Be Hansel fat, or be he lean, tomorrow I must kill and cook him." Oh, what a grief for the poor little sister to fetch the water, and how the tears flowed down her cheeks. "Dear God, pray help us," she cried. "If we had been devoured by wild beasts in the woods, at least we could have died together. We should have died together. Spare me your lamentations, said the old woman. They are of no avail." Early next morning, Gretel had to get up, make the fire, and fill the kettle. "First we will do the baking," said the old woman. "I have heated the oven already, and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel towards the oven, out of which the flames were already shining. "Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it is properly hot, so the bread may be baked." And Gretel once in, she meant to shut the door upon her and let her be baked, but then she would have eaten her. But Gretel perceived her intention, and said, "I don't know how to do it. How shall I get in?" "Stupid goose," said the old woman. "The opening is big enough, do you see? I could get in myself." And she stooped down and put her head in the oven mouth. Then Gretel gave her a push so that she went no further, and shut the iron door behind her and put up the board. Oh, how frighteningly she howled! But Gretel ran away and left the wicked witch to burn miserably. Gretel went straight to Hansel and opened the stable door and cried, "Hansel, we are free! The old witch is dead." Then out flew Hansel like a bird from its cage as soon as the doors opened. How rejoiced they both were! How they fell on each other's necks and danced around and kissed each other! And as they had nothing more to fear, they went over all the witch's house, and in every corner there stood chests of pearl and precious stones. This is something better than Flintstones, said Hansel as he filled his pockets, and Gretel, thinking she also could carry something home with her, filled her apron full. Now away we go, said Hansel. If we only can get out of the witch's wood. When they had journeyed a few hours, they came to a great piece of water. We can never get across this, said Hansel. I see no stepping stones and no bridge. There is no boat either, said Gretel. But here comes the white duck. If I ask her, she will help us over. So she cried, Duck, ducks, here we stand, Hansel and Gretel on the land. Stepping stones and bridge we lack. Carry us over on your nice white back. And the duck came accordingly, and Hansel got upon her and told his sister to come too. No, answered Gretel, that would be too hard upon the duck. We can go separately, one after the other. And that is how it is managed, and after they went on happily, until they came to a wood. The way they grew more and more familiar, till the last they saw at the distance their father's house. Then they ran till they came up to it, rushed in at the door, and fell on their father's neck. The man who had not had a quiet hour since he left his children in the wood, but the wife was dead. And when Gretel opened her apron, the pearls and precious stones were scattered all over the room. And Hansel took one handful after another out of his pocket. And then, all care at an end, they lived in a great joy together. Sing, every one, my story is done, and look round the house, there runs a little mouse. He that can catch her before she scampers in may make himself a fur cap out of her skin. Okay, so that was Hansel and Gretel, and now I will be reading Little Red Riding Hood. Here we go. Wait. Okay. Sorry, I was just seeing how long it was because the other one was quite long. I don't know where to get 22 minutes. Excuse me. Alright, so this is the last story for today, and it's Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet little maid, much beloved by everyone, but most of all by her grandmother, who never knew how to make enough of her. Once she sent her little riding hood of red velvet, and as it was very becoming of her, she never wore anything else. People called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here are some cakes and a flask of wine for you to take to grandmother. She is weak and ill, and they will do her good. Make haste and start before it grows hot, and walk properly and nicely, and don't run, or you might fall and break the flask of wine, and there will be none left for grandmother. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning, instead of staring about you. I will be sure to take care, said Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave her hand upon it. Now the grandmother lived away in the wood, half an hour's walk from the village. And when Little Red Riding Hood had reached the wood, she met the wolf. But as she did not know what a bad sort of animal he was, she did not feel frightened. Good day, Little Red Riding Hood, he said. Thank you kindly, Wolf, answered she. Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood? To my grandmother's. What are you carrying under your apron? Cakes and wine we baked yesterday, and my grandmother is very weak and ill, so they will do her good and strengthen her. Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood? A quarter of an hour's walk from here. Her house stands beneath the 3 oak trees, and you may know it by the hazel bushes, said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, that tender young thing would be a delicious morsel. and would taste better than the old one. I must manage somehow to get both of them. He then walked by Little Red Riding Hood a little while, and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, just look at the pretty flowers that are growing all around you. And don't you think you are listening to the song of the birds? You are posting along just as if you were going to school, and it is so delighted out here in the wood." Little Red Riding Hood glanced round her, and when she saw the sunbeams darting here and there through the trees, and the lovely flowers everywhere, she thought to herself, "If I were to take a fresh nosegay to my grandmother, she would be very pleased, and it is so early in the day I should reach her in plenty of time." And so she ran about in the wood, looking for flowers, and as she picked one, she saw a still prettier one a little farther off, and so she went further and further into the wood. But the wolf went straight to the grandmother's house and knocked on the door. "Who is there?" called the grandmother. "Little Red Riding Hood," he answered, "and I have brought you some cake and wine. Please open the door." "Lift the latch," cried the grandmother. "I am too feeble to get up." So the wolf lifted the latch, and the door flew open. He fell on the grandmother and ate her up without saying one word. Then he drew on her clothes and put on her cap, lay down in her bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood, who was all this time running along about among the flowers, and when she had gathered as many as she could hold, she remembered her grandmother and set off to go to her. She was surprised to find the door standing open, and when she came inside she felt very strange, and thought to herself, "Oh dear, how uncomfortable I feel! I'm so glad this morning to go to my grandmother." And when she said "Good morning," there was no answer. Then she went up to the bed and drew back the curtains, and there lay the grandmother with her cap pulled over her eyes, so that she looked very odd. "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have, the better to hear with." "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have, the better to see with." Oh, grandmother, what large hands you have, the better to take hold of you with." "But, grandmother, what a terrible large mouth you have, the better to devour you with." And no sooner than the wolf had said it, than he made one bound from the bed, and swallowed up poor Little Red Riding Hood. Then the wolf, having satisfied his hunger, lay down again in the bed, went to sleep, and began to snore loudly. The huntsman heard him as he was passing by the house, and thought, "How the old woman snores! I had better see if there is anything the matter with her." Then he went into the room and looked up to the bed, and saw the wolf lying there. At last I've found you, you old sinner," he said. "I have been looking for you a long time." And he made up his mind that the wolf had swallowed the grandmother whole, and that she might yet be saved. So he did not fire, but he took a pair of shears and began to slit the wolf's body. When he made a few snips, Little Red Riding Hood appeared, and after a few more ships she jumped out and cried, "Oh dear, how frightened I have been! It is so dark inside the wolf." And then came up the old grandmother, still living and breathing. But Little Red Riding Hood went and quickly fetched some large stones, in which she filled the wolf's body, so that when he woke, was going to rush away, the stones were so heavy he sank down and fell dead. They were all three very pleased. The huntsman took off the wolf's skin and carried it home. The grandmother ate the cakes and drank the wine, and held her head up again, and Little Red Riding Hood said to herself that she would never more stray about in the wood alone, and would mind what her mother told her. It must also be related how a few days afterwards, when the Little Red Riding Hood was again taking cakes to her grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and wanted to tell her to lead the path, but she was on her guard and went straight on her way, and told her grandmother how the wolf had met her and wished her good day, but had looked so wicked about the eyes that she thought it had not been on the high road, he would have devoured her. "Come," said the grandmother, "we will shut the door so that he may not come in." Soon after the wolf came knocking at the door and calling out, "Open the door, grandmother, I am Little Red Riding Hood, bringing you cakes." But they remained still and did not open the door. After the wolf slunk by the house and got last upon the roof to wait until Little Red Riding Hood should return home in the evening, and then he meant to spring down upon her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother discovered his plot. Now there stood before the house a great stone trough, and the grandmother said to the child, "Little Red Riding Hood, I was boiling sausages yesterday, so take the bucket and carry away the water so that they were boiled in, and pour it in the trout." And Little Red Riding Hood did so until the great trout was quite full. When the smell of sausages reached the nose of the wolf, and he snuffed it up, and looked round, and stretched out his neck so far he lost his balance and began to slip, and slipped down the roof straight into a great trout, and was drowned. Then Little Red Riding Hood went cheerfully home and came to no harm. Alright, so those were the two stories. And so if you know any stories from this book that you would like me to read, or any other books you would like me to read that you think I might have, leave a comment down below. Have a great day, and give me any more suggestions for what you want me to do in the month of October. Alright, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!